Zoom technical issue.
You're not alone. Apparently from mine, it has somebody else's name on my picture, so I don't know what's going on.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I
Okay.
sent you my link because your link wasn't working. So.
Oh, gotcha.
It's a little after 4:30, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Darlene, let me know when we're recording.
Yeah, Jamie's doing the recording.
We're
Jamie?
recording. You're good to go.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone to our afternoon regular school board meeting of Everett Public Schools. It is May 19th, and we will go ahead and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
With liberty and justice for all.
Oh, that is always a little bit more difficult with that flag on the screen, the virtual pledge. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the roll.
President Mason.
Present.
Vice President Sustain.
Present.
Director Byrd.
Present.
Director Ant Nichols.
Present.
Director Mitchell. Student Representative Hussein. Student Representative Tran. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our first item of business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, may you please introduce the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, board directors, and good evening, public. The adoption of the agenda. Tonight's agenda contains the following: the superintendent's report, a segment for board comments, a segment for public comments, a segment for routine business, a segment for strategic progress monitoring, segment for information and discussion, segment for new business and upcoming agenda items. Since publishing the agenda, the following changes have been made. Item 9.02, approval of personnel report. The personnel report was updated. Item 9.09, approval of resolution 1233, reemployment of non-supervisory certified employees. Contracts were added. Item 11.01, the coronavirus update, commencement, communications, presentation was added. Item 11.02, coronavirus update, revenue refunds, the presentation was updated. Item 13.03, policy 3225, school-based threat assessment, proposed new policy. The references were corrected. The board may elect to change order of business for a majority of the vote of the members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Or is there any further discussion?
There, hold on. So on the consent agenda for one of the items for the opioid response, the wrong file had been uploaded. The file for the the Narcan, the one for the student injury and first aid had been uploaded to that. So I don't see that appropriate attachment.
Larry, can you check on that for us?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. I think we can go ahead and adopt the agenda as it is the order of business. And when we get to the consent agenda, we'll make sure that that correction is made.
I don't think we'll. Okay.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. The agenda is adopted. So we will move on next to recognitions, and there are unfortunately no recognitions tonight. We had a lovely one last meeting. And then with that, we will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr.
Yes.
Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everybody. My report tonight, Board and Public, you'll hear a presentation on our commencement activities that will be taking place and the commencement ceremony. I want to thank staff, Kathy Reeves especially for her work putting this together, her hard work, and our community involvement. This was a transparent committee with a lot of members. To our senior class, this is a difficult time, but it's still a joyous time in this. I want to say to you that you have worked very hard to get here, and we will remember this for many, many years to come. And your attitude and perseverance during this time is a model for generations. Just being online, talking to seniors and talking to people on Zoom of what you're going through, what we're all going through. These are not easy. These are not the joyous times you expected to have, but I can't say enough how you're dealing with this really makes me proud and also empathetic to your needs. And when we get into the season, when we do announce you as a graduate of this great school system, I know you're going to make a great difference in society. So I thank you for modeling the correct behavior, and I want to share that to everybody publicly this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll go ahead and move on to board comments. And tonight I would like to, if it's okay, start with Student Representative Hussein. I want to hear from the students. She's about to become a senior. Oops, you're muted, I think. Can't hear you. Okay, Amina, I'm going to come back to you, okay? See if we can't get your audio going. Let's move to, I'm going to go backwards alphabetically this time, and Director Nichols. Do you have any comments for this afternoon?
Sorry, I'm having some technical issues on my end as well. The feed is going in and out. So
running rampant for all of us. Okay, I'm going to move on to Director Lassane. Pam, do you have comments for this afternoon?
This is a joyous time for our district because we're coming close to the end of the year when our students are going to be graduating or flying up to the next school, from middle school to high school and elementary school to middle school. And I'm looking forward to what they have to say about their experience during this pandemic, as well as their school year and how they're preparing themselves for the new phase of their life. And I'm looking also forward to hearing about how graduation will look this year. So I'm looking forward to that. I had the opportunity this past week to attend a virtual classroom at Woodside Elementary School. Mrs. Sykes invited me into her third grade classroom. Third grade is a unique time for some kids, 9 years old. A lot of things are important to 9-year-olds that I missed for over the years. I've forgotten about a lot of things, but birthdays are important, as well as the opportunity of sharing what new things they purchased this past year via Amazon because they couldn't go to stores, also things like that. So it was very exciting for me to be able to sit in a Zoom class and actually see how they were learning. I also got to sit in a classroom with Mr. Suda, the PE teacher at Woodside Elementary, and that was kind of neat to do something like that via Zoom. So all these new experiences are, as I say, new for me. I've never done classroom via Zoom, and I've never sat in an exercise class via Zoom. And so these are new things. And so I'm waiting to hear what our students are seeing going on during this time and how they feel about their promotion opportunities of going to a new school as well as graduating. So I'm looking forward to all those new things we're all learning. And as an adult that's 60 plus years old, it's always great to learn new things. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. Always good to be learning. And there's a lot of that happening right now. Let's see, Director Berg.
Hi, thank you. I would echo what Director Lasane had said about our graduates. It's been amazing seeing the resilience. And of course, when I say seeing, it's air quotes because we're watching it online and the Facebook posts and the Twitter feed and just watching all of these amazing, resilient graduates getting ready for the next chapter and knowing, you know, there's a sense of disappointment, but also just a sense of excitement as they move forward. The one thing that's really stuck out to me is kind of the unity across the state of all of our school boards, and sitting on the WASDA calls twice a week has really shown me that everybody's in the same boat and everybody's trying to figure out what's next, but it's great that we're all unified and trying to stay on one page and one message. To that point, I think the most exciting thing that we learned about this week was just the reopening work group that's going on and the diversity of stakeholders across the state that are really working on what's next, some suggestions for what's next after we come out of this crisis. So I'm excited about the work that they're doing and the products that they're releasing each and every week. And I just am very thankful for, again, the unity across the state amongst all of the school boards and all the school board directors.
Thank you. Director Nichols, were you able to get some volume there?
It's a network issue here, so it's just kind of lagging around this time of day. But I'll hold my comments for another meeting just in the interest of time.
Okay. And student representative, would you like to share anything at this time? It looks like maybe you don't have volume yet. So we're going to go ahead and if you get that corrected, we can come back to you certainly at a later time in the meeting. And I don't given the length of tonight's meeting, I don't want to go on too much, but I do want to say that I do concur with both Director Lasane and Berg that there's just so much learning and good things happening. It's easy to get bogged down and focus on the hardships and the lost opportunities, but I am also inspired by the new ways that we are approaching the work and things that I think will be lasting into the future that will really transform education. So I'm excited to see as we move back toward a new normal, how a blended scenario might look in the future, which I think will really benefit our kids and our staff and our teachers. So the district overall. Okay, so we are going to move on. We have several presentations, but first, before we get to those, we have public comments. And Jamie or Darlene, I'm not sure which one of you has collected those this evening. Do we have any public comments?
We do. We have one public comment. It is from the EASA group, the board. Says, I'm writing to you on behalf of the Everett Association of School Administrators, representative of school and district administrators. We want to take the opportunity to collectively thank you for your leadership Undoubtedly, you ran for school board to help represent the parents and community of Everett Public Schools, not imagining that your service would place you in the throes of a pandemic. At the last regular board meeting, you took a vote of confidence in the administrators in Everett Public Schools. While we are in unsure times, please know that this confidence is noticed and appreciated as we all work to serve our students, parents, and communities. Additionally, we would like to recognize Dr. Saltzman, who has opened up the lines of communication and shown an authentic desire to hear our vision for helping to contribute to strengthening our district. Thank you all for the sacrifice of time to help ensure that our district continues to move forward in serving each of our students. Sincerely, Matt Bennett, EASA board member, principal, Gateway Middle School. And that's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Nice words to hear, certainly. Okay, we will move on to our consent agenda. And could someone confirm that we have the correct information loaded into the consent agenda?
We do not. The policy that is in there currently is actually a different policy. I can load the current one and I can put it up on the screen if you'd like a moment to take a look at it.
Okay, why don't you do that while Dr. Saltzman introduces this afternoon's consent agenda.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The board consent agenda includes repetitive business items such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts, grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes it includes items that occur less frequently but are of routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in the Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments regarding these items. Therefore, the consent agenda is being presented as published for board approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have the policy that we're referencing? Are you?
Yeah. So this is the one, 3425.
Okay.
I believe that's the one you were referencing, Director Nichols.
Correct. Yeah, the one that was loaded was the 3523.
Okay, directors have had an opportunity to see this policy several times, both in the Friday report and then again at our last board meeting. And it was moved forward, I believe, with no changes. So if everyone's comfortable, I will go ahead and ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve this afternoon's consent agenda. Would any director like to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries and the consent agenda is approved. We now have our strategic progress monitoring update tonight. And tonight we have the opportunity to learn about graduation for the class of 2020 and a 24 credit update, which looks very different this time than in previous years. So I'll go ahead and turn it over.
Oops. Yes, thank you, Director Mason. I'm gonna, this is Peter Scott. Good afternoon, everyone.
You're gonna, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to, while Dr. Kathy Woods loads up the presentation here, and if somebody could share screen with her, I'm gonna take the opportunity, if I could, to introduce a few introductory comments here. First is that the report that you're about to see around progress to graduation and 24 credit plan update illustrates the many people, tools, and processes involved in supporting students toward on-time graduation. And so we celebrate the growth over time that you're going to see and the 95.9% four-year graduation rate for the last year's graduating class. At that same time, though, we recognize that we have significant miles to go to ensure each student is well prepared for post-secondary academic, career, and life choices. We know that we don't yet have proficiency rates in core academic areas across our system proportional to our high graduation rates. We also know that we need to apply that same tenacity toward instructional improvement in all core academic areas and accelerate student learning outcomes across our system, just as we do for on-time graduation processes. So with that frame, I'll turn it over to Dr. Kathy Woods, and she'll take it away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Scott, and thank you to the board and Dr. Salzman for allowing me to present this, this report, strategic progress report to you this afternoon. This is, many of the pictures here are pictures from graduation last year, and graduation is going to look a little different this year, but it's still a joyous occasion and something to celebrate. We'll be looking at graduation rates for our last two cohorts, on-time graduation progress for the current class, the systems we have in place to support on-time graduation, and then a 24 credit plan update for students in the class of 2021 and beyond. It aligns with our strategic goals and key performance outcome. We're just going to start. I will review the graduation rates from the last two cohorts. You know our graduation rates are high, and you've probably seen a slide like this before. They haven't always been that way. With leadership from our school board, our whole system recognized a problem in 2005 when the graduation rate in Everett was 62%, while the state's was 74%. There was a strong focus on ensuring that our students had access to the support they needed to graduate. Dropout rates declined, and graduation rates climbed faster than the graduation rates for the state as a whole. What can be learned from this story is that when we set lofty goals and focus resources, including staffing, technology, professional development, time, and fiscal resources, our entire system can make positive changes for students. We have had a tiered approach to supports and interventions as we shift our focus toward higher levels of proficiency across all areas of academics and achievement of college and career readiness standards. A similar, consistent, focused approach over time can show similar results. Our focused approach doesn't only look at overall success, but we also closely monitor student progress among different demographic groups, such as students with disabilities, as seen progressing over time in this slide, and English language learners and our emerging bilingual students in this slide. Now we're going to look at the progress toward graduation for our current class of 2020, those resilient students that board members recognized in your comments at the beginning of this meeting. There are 3 areas of graduation requirements for the class of 2020. They're required to have 22 credits in required subject areas. They need to demonstrate having met standard in English language arts and math in one of several pathways. The state is no longer characterizing these as smarter balanced assessment or alternatives, but has instead identified these as co-equal means of demonstrating readiness for college or career, provided that the pathway aligns with the student's high school and beyond plan. And that high school and beyond plan is that 3rd area of graduation requirement. The high school and beyond plan is an individual plan that students work on with guidance from staff throughout middle school and high school to plan their course taking aligned with their post-secondary goals and interests, making the high school experience a more personalized one for each student. They complete their plan as a senior through their college and career readiness seminar. In addition to the Smarter Balanced Assessment, dual credit courses, AP courses, and exams, SAT, ACT, ASVAB, and CTE course sequences, for the class of 2020 and 2021, students who qualify for special education services can also meet the graduation pathway requirement through alternative routes, including the locally determined assessment. And the graduation pathway requirement may be waived if a student is accepted to a post-secondary educational institution. We'll talk a little bit about that expedited appeal in a few minutes. I'm going to spend a little bit of time unpacking this slide. It shows our progress towards graduation for our students of 2020 in regards to the English Language Arts graduation pathway. For our students in the class of 2020, 92% of them are on track regarding credits. In other words, they had, coming into this semester, 19 or more credits, putting them on track to meet the 22 credit requirement. That's an increase of 3% over the class of 2019 when they were moving into their last semester. So a little note about on track, the way we're using it here, it means that the students have the credits they need, as I said, 19 or more, in order to graduate by just taking a regular load of 6 credits or 6 courses that would be typical of a semester. Many of the students who are off track, that 8% or 97 students, many of them also have graduation plans in place that will allow them to graduate on time through credit recovery or taking additional classes. So for the on-track students, those 92% of the students, 97% of them have met standard on the English Language Arts pathway. This is prior to us accounting for CTE course sequences, which we are currently approving. And it does not include any of the expedited appeals. Some students are meeting that pathway requirement this year through AP exams, AP courses, or dual credit courses as well. So that number will increase. Of the 8% of students not on track by credit, 73% or 71 students met their English Language Arts pathway. Again, many of these students are also in the process of meeting the requirement through course taking or exams. This slide shows how each of our demographic groups of students are progressing toward meeting both credit requirements and the English Language Arts pathway. The green bar represents the students on track to, the percent of students in that group on track to graduate by credit, and the blue bar represents the percentage of students in that group who have met their English Language Arts graduation pathway. In each group, except for our English learners, more students have met standard on the graduation pathway than are on track through credits. We definitely see some gaps here, most significantly with our Pacific Islander students, which is a very small population. It's 16 students in this cohort. This is the same graphic that you saw previously, but this time for the math graduation pathway. Still, you see that 92% of our students are on track by credit, and 90% of these students have met standard in the math graduation pathway. Slightly more than half of the students not on track by credit have met standard in math. So still the vast majority of our students have met the graduation pathway in mathematics, but student performance on this in math lags the performance in English Language Arts. And here you can see, unlike English Language Arts, in most of the demographic groups, all except for special education, more students are on track by credits than by the math graduation pathway. Again, the green bars are the same bars you saw in the previous slide for students on track by credit. The blue bars represent those who have met standard on a graduation pathway in mathematics. You see similar gaps in our success with English learners and Pacific Islander students as in the English Language Arts pathway. But you also see other gaps start to open up, demonstrating a need for improving our systems and instruction to ensure higher levels of success in math for students across the board. And particularly, you see some gaps opening up different from English Language Arts with our students who identify as Black or African American. For students who have not yet met standard in the English Language Arts or math graduation pathway, the state has outlined a process for an assessment appeal waiver. For this year only, a category has been added so that a student who is scheduled to take an assessment this spring, and that assessment was canceled due to COVID-19, they can apply for a waiver. This includes students who are scheduled to take the SBA, the SAT, the ACT, or for students who qualify for special education services, a locally determined assessment. All of these assessments were canceled this spring. Our efforts to ensure that each of our students has a pathway to graduate are student by student. They're one by one. The on-time graduation team has designed sustainable, targeted supports to connect students to school and therefore to success. The on-time graduation learning community includes district level and school level staff. We meet regularly and have individualized plans for students. It's an all hands on deck operation. Again, this is the kind of teamwork that's necessary when making any systemic progress, including as we focus on increasing student achievement in all areas and at all levels across our district. This graphic shows the flow of the work throughout the year with our on-time graduation team. This spring, it looks different, particularly that runway to graduation and summer transition as school buildings have closed. But the work of the team continues. Here are some of the high-level strategies we've used to ensure that students meet the graduation requirements. Note that some of them are tier 1 or universal strategies, like building a positive school culture and ensuring that all students have electronic devices to address those barriers. And some of them are individualized for specific students, like individual contracts with students, credit recovery, and other sorts of things. And the staff are working on this daily. I was on a Zoom call this morning with some success coordinators who were planning Zoom meetings with EL students who had yet to finish their high school and beyond plan, and they were walking them through that process. So they're doing that work, it's just happening in a little bit different environment. Some of the important work that's behind the scenes is our work tracking students who have dropped out of school. We work to get them back into our schools, and if that's not possible, to connect them with another program that will best meet their needs. All of this work of tracking the dropouts and outreach is continuing this spring. We continue to work to connect students to other programs if we can't get them re-engaged in our schools, and that includes high school completion programs in our local community colleges, and also Graduation Alliance, our 1418 program. With school buildings closed, we have adjusted our work and have focused on connecting students to adults who can support them, even in this remote environment. And we focused on connecting students to their future plans. We've identified alternative credit earning options. We've done lots of outreach to students and families. We've embedded social and emotional learning and culturally responsive practices in professional development. We've especially focused on transition services and career exploration and connecting students to post-secondary resources for our students who qualify for special education services, as that's really important for them. We will continue with summer programs this year. They will be under one virtual roof, our high school programs will, and we will ensure that students in the class of 2020 graduate by August if they do not graduate by June. Our summer programs also support students in the class of 2021 and beyond as they work towards meeting the 24 credit requirement that they have to graduate. So let's look at the plans for those students. A little bit of history. In 2015, state law changed to require students to earn 24 credits in order to graduate, beginning with the class of 2019. However, districts had the option to apply for waivers for the classes of 2019 and 2020. And waivers were submitted for 97 out of the 295 districts across our state, including Everett, and that represented 60% of the high school students across the state had those waivers. So for Everett students, we will need our students to meet the 24 credit requirement starting with the class of 2021. But just as the class of 2020, in addition to the credit requirement, students are required to meet the graduation pathways in math and language arts. And the pathway and the student's course taking need to be informed by the high school and beyond plan, which again is intended to create a more personalized experience for students through high school. Our 24 credit strategies are about creating flexible options for students, honoring their post-secondary goals, and maintaining high standards. I've included this graphic as I've included this graphic as a separate handout for you because this is kind of small and hard to see, but it demonstrates that students have 17 core credits that are required of all students. Those credits are in English, social studies, health and fitness, career and technical education, math and science. They also have 2 credits in fine arts and 2 in world language. One of those credits in art and both of the world language credits can be replaced with personalized pathway courses that meet students' post-secondary plans as expressed in their high school and beyond plan. Students also have electives, including college and career readiness seminar in our district. So over the last several years, we have developed communications, shared the new graduation requirements, revised policy, and expanded opportunities for students to meet their graduation requirements through expanded offerings and really intentional work. We've worked together at both the school and district level to develop opportunities for individual students and to identify structural supports. Each of the comprehensive high schools and Sequoia developed and implemented and revised pilots to address students off track to graduate and increase social emotional learning for both middle and high school students so that they had that sense of connection to school, which would increase their ability to earn the credits and do the learning that they need to be college and career ready. We've also created a secondary school structures advisory team to address barriers and opportunities. So we took the idea of that personalized pathway flexibility in the law, in student course taking. We combined that with our robust system of student by student monitoring and reporting. And we identified successful strategies that we were already using in our on-time graduation work to identify a suite of strategies to meet the 24 credit requirements. Across the state, districts have implemented both structural changes to the schedule and have added supports within the current structure to support students in meeting the 24 credit requirement. The 24 credit task force did consider the structural changes that allow students to earn more than 24 credits during the regular school day, things other than the regular 6-period day. But these structural changes require significant financial resources and have significant implications in our collective bargaining agreements. To ensure students will meet the 24 credit requirement, we've implemented lots of supports, including extended learning, both before and after the school day and into the summer, high school credits that they can earn in middle school, and dual credit courses in high school. And I would say that our dual credit courses in high school, including college in the high school and CTE dual credit, we're a leader in the state in those courses. These are some of the numerous ways students can earn credit in our system, including in addition to the 6-period day. And I just want to, did it again. I just want to highlight one of them, the World Language Assessment. We give this opportunity to students twice a year, and they can earn up to 4 credits based on national standards. This recognizes the strengths of our bilingual students, the strengths they bring to us, and is a model for how competency-based credit opportunities may be offered in other areas. Just this fall, 107 students earned 373 high school credits in world languages through this assessment. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the spring, the spring implementation. Normally, we offer it twice a year. The Secondary School Structures Advisory Team has also met to study and make recommendations about middle school structures that will meet student needs. We recognize that ensuring that students graduate ready for college, career, and life is not the job of high school alone, but also the job of everyone across our system. So our students are progressing toward graduation. We've provided increased opportunities for students to demonstrate competency and for us to recognize their strengths. For example, through the World Language Assessment, internships, and other opportunities beyond the school day. Our pilot programs in the high schools are showing success in helping students who are off track to recover and graduate on time. And our student-by-student focus is what has allowed us to experience a high level of success. So next, we need to continue to build on our past successes as graduation requirements change by focusing on current students, particularly focusing on social emotional learning and building a stronger sense of belonging. We are focused on enrolling our students in the class of 2021 in summer school if they're behind on credits. We also need to strengthen the use of the High School and Beyond plan as a vital tool in making sure that our students have a personalized pathway through high school and into their post-secondary goals. And finally, we can apply the strategies of tiered supports and that all hands on deck strategy to core academic practices so that we see growth in student performance and college and career readiness over time. Thank you. We'll entertain questions and comments.
Thank you. And I think, can I say thank you, Dr. Woods?
Yes, thank you.
So for the directors that don't know, fairly recently, Kathy Woods added a title to her name and completed her doctorate, is that correct? How would you say that?
Doctorate of Education, yeah, doctorate.
Yeah. Doctorate program. Thank you. So a huge congratulations to you. That's just a big honor and also a lot of hard work. So again, the continued learning, which is what we're all about, right?
Thank you.
So with that, we will entertain questions or comments. Directors, please, I guess I can't see everyone, so please just sort of speak up. Go ahead, Director Lesane.
Dr. Woods, you mentioned that students would be allowed to go to summer school. Will there be any limitations to those students who may not have the funds to allow for credit recovery during summer school? Is credit recovery a fee charged situation?
Thank you for asking that question. Our credit recovery courses in the summer are all free, as they are during the school year. And there are also, and this year it's going to be all online, so it won't be face-to-face. So that makes it a little more difficult, but we'll have teachers, and we'll also have success coordinators that can continue to work with the students, but credit recovery is free. We also have online high school for students who may want to get ahead or take some other courses. And while there is a fee attached to that, the Everett Public Schools Foundation has provided scholarships for each of the high schools so that if students want to get ahead and that's financially difficult for them, we will be able to help them with that.
So in your handout for English language arts success and math success, it looked like there were roughly 61, 67 students in that category for on-time graduation in August. Is that correct, or do you have those actual numbers?
Of how many will graduate? We never really know how many will graduate in June and in August until pretty close to the time, because our students, as I said, those students who are off track to graduate, they might be off track by a half a credit, and they're making those up as we speak. They have some opportunity through assessments, through competency-based credit, and other kinds of things to actually graduate. So last year, we were actually in a little worse shape than we are now. We had 89% of our students, and these are our active students, and we had, actually few summer graduates through our regular programs. We had more in Sequoia, and we had more through Graduation Alliance, but most of our students actually made it by the end of June. So we will have some in August likely, but all of the ones that are currently off track will not all have to wait until August. They have plans in place to get there by June.
Thank you.
And I just had a couple of questions. So one was with the 24 credit and the different things that were looked at. It sounded like by the state work group, just in terms of how we could get kiddos more credits during the school day. So is Everett, is our district going to look at any of those, or did we kind of say no because of the implications with our contracts that none of those would be applicable? Like, where do we leave that?
We have looked at them currently, both because there are implications for bargaining, but also significant financial expense if we were going to change. And so right now in a 6-period day, a teacher is teaching 5/6 of the day. If we move to a 7-period day and they taught 5 of the 7 periods, that would be an expense. If we move to an 8, various schedules have various different costs. So, and it's expensive, but
I was just wondering, because I know that some districts have had success with block periods and doing some creative things with that specifically. And I just wasn't sure if that was something that we would look at depending on what the numbers are going to look like for next year in terms of getting folks to that 24 credit, there's just not any wiggle room, really.
Right.
So the other thing I was going to ask about is just kind of making sure that I understand. So still, like with 9th graders, they still cannot get, like, this next coming year, college in the high school. Is that correct? Because I know that's a state law that they were thinking about changing, and I think it got nixed at the last minute.
That's correct. 9th graders are not eligible for college in the high school credit. And yeah, it's at the state level. They were going to change it so only 11th and 12th graders could make it, and not 10th.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, on that.
Yeah, so that's one thing to just be aware of, like how we're communicating that to parents, because I know a lot of our 9th grade kiddos are sitting in classrooms, like AP and Biro. That if you're in 10th grade, you can get college in the high school. If you're in 9th grade, you can't. And the same for our world languages, and just making that super clear to parents from the beginning, so that they don't inadvertently think that their kids are going to get credit if they aren't.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Nichols, do you have any comments or questions?
Not at the moment. I thought that was a sufficient level of detail for what this was.
Great. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for the information and presentation. Very informative, very helpful in understanding where we're headed this year and into the future.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to our information and discussion topics tonight, I would like to mention that we have quite a few attendees tonight who have joined our meeting from the EASA group. In support and thanks regarding Principal Bennett's letter that was read during public comments. And I think Dr. Saltzman would like to say a word.
Yes, thank you. To our public, which I would consider all our partners out there, principals are so important to any school district, but especially in Everett, we have outstanding leaders. I was a principal for 15 and a half years. And I know the grind that they take on every day. And I cannot tell you that in every building, I cannot share with you enough the great leaders that we have in every building. And I want to thank the principals, and I want to thank the board, because our school board helps us develop principals. And when you have great leaders, you'll have great results, and that's where we're headed. So to our principals out there and assistant principals out there, and to all administrators, I know it's a 24/7 job. I've lived it. And during these times, I think you've probably Zoomed about 4,000 times in at least 2 weeks. Okay, every week Zooms. And to the public tonight, you might hear a loud noise from my computer, because I think the Zooms are wiping out my system. So again, to our administrators, we love you. God bless you, and continue doing the great work that you do every day for all our students. Thank you.
Thank you for that, for those words. At this point, we are going to go ahead and move on to information and discussion. And our first item, 11.01, is the update on our commencement for the class of 2020.
Okay, that is me. So I'm going to share my screen.
Thank you.
Can you see it? Okay, so as we all know, the commencement ceremony for 2020 was going to look very different. We found out probably about the end of March. We just didn't know what it would look like and what our options are. So right away, Dr. Salzman pulled together a committee, and we wanted to put together what our priorities were for this committee and trying to decide what commencement 2020 would look like. So the first thing that we talked about is that we wanted to make sure that students and families were included in the process. We wanted to make sure that there was consistency throughout the district and also that it was equitable for all seniors. But we also wanted to really try to create the best celebration possible and to make it acceptable within the social distancing guidelines. So that was where we started, and I'm going to just talk you through a little bit about the process and how we got to where we are today. The first thing we did is we held a Zoom focus group with a bunch of seniors and their parents from all 4 schools. There were 58 people total in the Zoom focus group. And they broke out into different breakout rooms with their schools and brainstormed ideas and shared ideas and tried to come up with the most creative ideas possible. And then each of those schools reported back to the main group on what their top ideas and thoughts were. And from that report out, we created a survey with the top 5 ideas and sent that survey out to every senior and senior family and guardians in the district. And we had almost 1,200 respondents to that survey. And the top 5 ideas, if you can see here, the first one is that there would be a 100% virtual graduation where you just send in pictures and it would be spliced in with speeches. That one, if you can tell by the barcode, blue is the worst idea and dark orange is the best idea. So 100% virtual really was the least liked of the group of the ideas. The second option here is the hybrid model where graduates would get to walk across the stage, they'd be videotaped with social distancing, and those pieces would be spliced together into a final product video. That also was not the top idea. You can see it was next to last in the options of what people really wanted. The top 2 options for parents and students in the responding group was to postpone graduation in hopes that there would be able to hold one later in the summer before people went to college or off to employment or the military. And then the other one would be to have a social distancing ceremony at Memorial Stadium, and with or without audience, just try to social distance all of the seniors in one school onto the field and have graduation there. Those were the top 2 ideas. Another idea that came through was to hold a drive-through graduation where it would be almost like a car parade where someone would drive up and then they would get out and get their picture taken while getting their diploma handed to them. So once we had these ideas and the prioritization from the students and their parents, we started to dive into what the logistics of that would be and what would be acceptable considering what the current mandates are. So the first one we figured out is we really can't postpone graduation in hopes of holding it later. We don't know when everything will open up. Right now, they're saying for groups this large, it could be way into the fall. And we don't want to have people miss out on graduation because they are starting school or college early in June, or they have a job or whatever the case may be. So we knew that that option wasn't feasible. The next one we ended up crossing off was to look at the Memorial Stadium option. And that had to go off the list because, first of all, the control of the comings and goings of that many students at one time, and to have people out on the field really logistically couldn't happen, and we couldn't commit to say we definitely can ensure there will be social distancing. And actually, since we put this together, this option was taken off the table by some parameters that have been given to us as well. And then the last one here, the drive-through graduation, the committee had concerns both about safety and about equity on this one. Not every student has access to a vehicle. There were safety concerns with everyone driving around in a parade-like fashion. And then we also found out that they would not be able to get out of their car and get their picture taken. So that took a little bit away from the drive-through idea. So we decided that the hybrid model was the best liked of the two remaining. And we put together a plan that would work with this hybrid model. We discussed it with the city, and we sent a letter to the governor to see if we would be within compliance, and we also sent the letter to OSPI. We heard back that the plan was not in compliance. So this was about a week and a half ago. So they said, that's not gonna work. So we were thinking we might have to go 100% virtual. But the letter we wrote actually spurred them to create some statewide standards for graduation ceremonies this year. So last Thursday, the Department of Health came out with statewide standards for graduation this year. And looking at those standards, we found out that we are able to do the hybrid video model if we are within phase 2 of the governor's safe opening plan. So we modified our original hybrid plan. We reproposed it to the city and the Snohomish Department of Health, because they have to be, part of the standard now is that they have to approve your plans. And we found out yesterday that our plans have been approved. So I want to talk you a little bit through what that plan actually looks like. What the plan is that we would proceed with the virtual hybrid option, assuming that we are in phase 2 by June 11th. So, you know, we don't know exactly when we're going to enter into phase 2. There's predictions it could happen around June 1st. But we are proceeding as if we're going to be in phase 2 by June 11th. And at the same time, we're collecting senior photos. We're starting to record the speeches. So if for some reason we get kicked back and we're in phase 1 until August, we'll still have a backup plan for graduation, because we can do the 100% virtual. But if we get pushed into phase 2, then we're going to be able to proceed with the virtual option with the recorded videos. And there's also a chance maybe if we could push it back a week if we had to, if we found out that we just needed 1 more week here or there. So this is what it would look like. It's going to be at the Everett Civic Auditorium, and each school will be given a specific day, and each student will be given a very specific time frame. Students will arrive with a full cap and gown and a mask, and they'll park back behind around the gym area. They will get called at a certain time to get out of their car and to go stand in line outside the stadium. We can't have more than 5 people gathering in one area, so there would not be more than 5 people in a socially distanced line. And then within the auditorium, there would be a full graduation stage set up with a videographer, and an administrator. And when that student's times come, they get to come inside, they get to take off their mask, they'll walk across the stage and be recorded walking across the stage and picking up their graduation certificate cover off the table. And then they'll go and they'll be able to get their picture taken, and then they remask, and then they have to get in their car and they leave. And then the next graduate comes in. So it's a long process. It's going to be a really long couple days, but it allows every graduate to get their video taken of them walking across the stage, doing the little tassel turn and getting their picture taken. And we're able to guarantee that there's no more than 5 people in a room at one time. And so that is the current plan. Tonight, we're hoping to communicate this out to the focus group that was part of the original discussion so they can see how their input helped contribute towards our decision. And then tomorrow morning, we are going to send information out to seniors and parents from the district. And then those final details of what time do I show up? What time is my day? If I don't have a cap and gown, how do I get a cap and gown? What if I don't have transportation? All of those details that we're working out will be communicated to them from their specific high schools following the conversation this week. So that's the plan. Do we have questions?
Thank you, Kathy, for the detailed overview. I want to thank everyone who's been working on this. It has been a very difficult thing because I know students and parents have been quite anxious and excited to see how this is going to unfold, rightfully so. And the district has been silent on the topic, mostly because there's been a lot of work and approvals that needed to happen before it could actually be rolled out. And so I appreciate you taking a little bit more time and pushing the envelope as far as we could to find out what could happen, and especially that you sort of triggered a broader conversation for a lot of other districts as well, so that perhaps they're able to do something that is sort of a hybrid model like this as well. So thank you for that. I appreciate that, and well, as a parent too. So yeah, we have quite a few parents with seniors. So directors, do you have other comments or questions?
I just have a quick question. So logistically, like if we're in phase 2 and everything goes well, would there still be like a traditional ceremony? Like is it just, so I understand the part of them getting their diploma and getting the pictures, but would there still be like the ceremony with speeches? Would that be a recorded thing?
Sorry, I didn't give that level of detail. So all of the normal speeches, including the superintendent speeches, are being recorded earlier. And then at the end, they're all being spliced in. So each school will have a complete ceremony.
Got it.
Their own speakers and their own graduates. And a week after the recording, it will premiere on YouTube. And then everyone will be able to
Got
see
it.
Yeah.
That makes, I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, and so then you have Dr. Saltzman in a room giving a speech. And so, but my other question, because it's so, and just to say, this is amazing. Like you guys did an amazing job. I can't thank you enough for the clarity, for the communication, for getting all the stakeholders together to have input. I mean, that's huge. But I was just going to ask, because it's so tech heavy, right? So even the plan A and the plan B, and to your point about watching on YouTube, and it made me think back to our last presentation about summer school, are our kiddos going to be able to keep the devices? Because I'm just thinking out loud of like, you've got a senior right now who has maybe the only computer in their house that they're using, but you might also have a middle schooler and other people that they have, you know, all of our kids have devices. So to watch graduation, participate in things that go over the, you know, June 19th deadline, and maybe even do summer school, will our kiddos be able to keep the devices and hotspots that they currently have?
Yeah, even though this isn't my realm, I'll tell you, we're preparing a communication right now to go out to families on Thursday or Friday that does say that they can keep their Chromebooks through the summer.
Oh, great.
Learning, unless they're, you know, moving or.
Yeah, unless they're, okay. That was just logistically in my head. I was thinking YouTube, how are they going to access it? So, okay, awesome. Thank you for that heads up. But this is a great job. Thank you.
And I would just like to echo that. This is a huge undertaking, and the level of thought that you folks have put into it, and everything that's come out of it, it seems like I can only applaud you folks for what you're doing, and as well as you, Dr. Saltzman, for getting ahead of the curve on this. So yeah, I just thank you very much, Kathy, for sharing with us what's going on.
Thank you, Kathy, for sharing. And everybody has echoed the same thing that I would like to say. This is very large. This has gone much further than I thought we would be going as far as how to accommodate graduation. And this is really good that you've put a lot of work and a lot of participation from our parents, stakeholders, other people in the community. This is great. My question is, you mentioned that people will be able to keep their Chromebooks or laptops over the summer for those that are attending summer school, and also having the opportunity to actually have time to see and view the graduation. What are we doing for the seniors who will be leaving and their laptop? Because I don't know how many of the seniors may be the only person within their family that has a computer. What are we doing for them?
Does someone want to address that?
Yes.
Or is this something that we'd like to table just because it's a little off topic for, I don't know if we're prepared to answer that to the public or not, Dr. Salzman?
Yeah, I can let Brian Beckley talk briefly, but why don't we, at our next meeting, just share the information, but just to answer the question. But we have a very extensive plan, fellow board directors, for everybody in the system.
Yes, Director Lesane, to answer your question, there is a plan about the seniors being able to maintain if they need it beyond the date of graduation. But we'll outline that for you in a detailed plan.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, how will they be able to view the graduation ceremony, you know, if they don't have the proper, you know, I mean, sure, you can look at YouTube on your phone, your cell phone, but you know, how will their families, if that's the only laptop in the household?
Okay, do you have any further questions? I appreciate your concern regarding the technology, and it sounds like there is a plan in place to allow both seniors and families to continue being able to use their devices. I will remind folks that seniors graduate, they are done with school, I think 2 weeks earlier than the rest of the students, which has always been the case, or a week and a half or so. And then having young adults and a teenager in my own house, I can tell you that the majority of what they view is on their cell phone. I think their eyes are a little bit better for those size devices, where I rely on my computer. But I know that a lot of students have access to cell phones, if not a computer. But we do need to make sure that everyone can see their graduation ceremony, certainly. That's very important.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions on this topic, we'll thank Kathy Reeves once again for providing a detailed overview and move on to our next coronavirus update, which is refunds and what has been in the works since our school buildings closed for those individuals who signed up for sports and field trips and all sorts of things. So I believe it looks like Jeff Moore is going to kick us off. There he is. Take her away.
Good evening, board members and our community colleagues. I'm going to share screen. And now ask is, whoop, there we go. Hold on a moment, the F5 button did not work. So let's go here. There we go. Okay, thank you. Is everybody able to see that? Okay, perfect. I know that somebody's moving a lot of paper in the background. It's not me. That, as we know,
can we ask whoever has their phone on the call to mute it, please?
Thank you. Thank you. So in brevity, the district, throughout the district, there's so many different ways in which our community and our students support the curricular and extracurricular activities tonight. In brevity, I'm just going to go through those and the progress in each, but I can't move forward without acknowledging all of the advisors, all of the administrators, the accounting, the legal, the procurement, all of those teams that are actively trying to seek and maximize the amount of revenues we can get back into our students and our families, especially during this most difficult time. This presentation is just going to follow the board schedule 6115S, and we see that now and again with updates, and so I'll just move along rather quickly. Our student meals, we're going to follow our normal annual procedures. They are able to contribute to meal accounts, and at the end of each year or at any time, a parent can request a refund. We notify seniors as they're leaving to request a refund so they can get their proceeds back to them. So nothing changes with school meals. Student fees is an area and an array of different elements. As you can see, the advanced placement test this year, it will continue. Normally, I understand that the national board does, or the college board does not refund, but due to the current situation, if they don't take the test online, they will receive a refund by their absence. ASB cards are student directed. They set the rates. We do not know of any ASBs that intend to refund the ASB contribution for the ASB cards. Athletic participation fees, we are refunding for sports that did not occur. That's spring athletics and middle school wrestling. Band, choir, and orchestra, they have an annual fee that really is to cover the transition from one student to another. There's no intention on refunding that for those programs, as well as musical instruments, which we believe are still in our homes, and hopefully they're still practicing and helping their families enjoy music. Classroom fees, there's certain classroom fees, and the way to picture it is a pottery class where the student wants to do something above what the normal supplies are, and they're able to apply or pay for a fee for that opportunity. If they've used the materials within the class up to that point, they won't be refunded. If they weren't used, then they will be refunded. Parking permits, we've worked through some logistics. We believe that we can refund 30% of the parking permits based upon where the schools close. So it's not a guarantee, but we believe that we can do that at this time. PTSA and SAT tests are offered in our buildings for free. When it comes down to the SAT that students sign up for outside of our revenue stream, they will work directly with the college board for a refund. Other student fees, obviously planners, agendas, days books are issued at the beginning of the year and students retain them and they're in their possession. Subscriptions for online vocabulary, Time for Kids, and a number of those online supports, they're still able to use online at home today. World Language Proficiency Assessment, there's one in the fall and there was one scheduled in March. It did not occur, so there's a full refund. Yearbooks have been published and will be distributed. And as Dr. Woods mentioned, we do have students who do take online high school or online summer school, and if they're not in need of credit and they're excelling, then they will be charged their applicable fee. Moving on to sort of the unique area of our world, and that has to do with everything extracurricular that students do and zoo trips and A to Z, you know, A to Z being zoo. We want to talk a little bit about these larger excursions that are being done primarily in our comprehensive high schools. And I think I would suggest that when you think about all the different trips and activities that do occur, they're organized into various different levels of complexity. And these larger trips with extreme complexity and quite frankly, over $250,000, we conduct RFPs and we basically look out and identify travel agents that they can use that are bound to the requirements of the request for proposals. And that's generally what has happened in these cases, particularly at Jackson High School. Oftentimes when they're this large of a commitment, the funding runs through the ASB, and because of the commitment and the need for to spread the not the risk, but in order to get the economy of scale, parents are asked to sign agreements that not only bind them to non-refundable fees, but also ensure that they are committed to follow through with the trip. Obviously, this is a bit of a different circumstance, but the parents are also encouraged to acquire trip insurance. So at this point in time, I'll just go through each of these. I guess I do also want to mention that I do want to thank Sarah Yeckley, our procurement supervisor, for working so closely with staff. We are having tremendous success with recouping these investments. So if I were to take a look at Jackson High School band trip, for example, the overall amount for the trip is about $270,000. They went through a major travel agency. The cost per person was about $2,850. And because of the relationship with the band director, with one of the vendors back there, and because the airline tickets had only been put down as a deposit, we were able to get, for the most part, a full refund for the tickets. And in the case of the actual activities that would occur, the vendor agreed to roll that forward and to roll that into next year. The ASB and the site-based decision-making process recognized that they had ASB reserves to the extent that they could refund seniors, and then next year, as the underclassmen grow into the program, they can then buy those seats. So it's not a full refund, but it's a way of pushing it forward into next year. The orchestra choir trip to New York is somewhat different. There is a different vendor involved, and there were a set of non-refundable deposits listed up front. It was supposed to go over Memorial Day weekend, or basically in the next few days. Day two, the overall airline was not booked. However, it was a very, very complex trip, and we're working effectively with the travel agent, who at this point in time, under the contract, would only be obligated to refund everything except the $473 per person deposit. We are making progress with them and them actually covering just the costs that they incurred in organizing the event. So we believe that per person non-refundable deposit is closer to $378 per family or student. And at this time, we're still negotiating with that particular agent to try to secure a roll forward of some of those. So still negotiating, and we're making progress, but at this point in time, there is a non-refundable deposit in place, and it's somewhere between $378 and $473 per family. The next trip from Cascade, and that overall value of that trip is $175,000. It was about $1,890 per person to sign up. So you can begin to see, as I list these, there's about $500,000 of resources assigned to about 3 or 4 trips. The next one is a different part of Jackson High School. I'm sorry, it's probably more not the junior bands, but not the premier bands, and they have a trip planned to Silverwood. And the total cost of that trip was about $350 per student. Amounts to about $34,300. It was also agreements signed in place. We've worked with the travel agent, and we've been able to refund all but about $50 per person. Finally, there's a national cheer competition for Cascade High School. It's about $25,000, about $1,000 per person to 25 students. It was intended to travel to Philadelphia and New York. We were able to get full refunds of everything involved except airfare. The airfare had been purchased and the tickets were placed in the student's name. The airline has agreed to give credit to the students in their names through, I think it's the 21st of March in 2021. So again, there's an opportunity to transfer those tickets to another entity, to another student. But at this point in time, that's the status as of this moment. Then there is our elementary school outdoor camps. For the most part, we are successful. Some of them occurred, and basically we call these 5th grade camps. Some of these occur in the fall. Some of these occur or would have occurred. We know the neighborhood, we know the area nonprofit camps that are provided out there. We're working closely with them to either get a refund or again to get a roll forward. Generally, there aren't student out-of-pocket costs. There may be PTA costs and there may be district resources involved. And then finally, there are CTE and other events that are of smaller stature. The particular one that is of focus right now is the Nature Bridge, and it's the Jackson High School STEM CTE program. Part of it is funded by STEM and CTE, and part of it was funded by the students. The event was canceled early in March, and so we're talking with the vendor because they are still in operation. We're in negotiations. The original answer was no refund. We spent the proceeds and we staffed it, example, but I think we're going to have some success at, again, crediting and rolling that into the future. And then the final category is the facility use. And for the most part, all of the facility use fees, if not all, most all, have been refunded for rental use of our facilities. So in brevity, I hope that gives you a quick update on where we are from A to Z.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, for the overview. There's a lot of details to take care of when we close schools, and this is one certainly that we want to continue to work and make sure that our families that we can do as much as we can for them. With that, I would like to turn it over to directors for questions or comments.
Mr. Moore, when you mentioned that all facility use fees were in process for refunds, are these when you have team sports that are different elementary, middle, and high schools that use our fields for team sports? And they pay a use fee for that team sport activity?
Building rentals, gym rentals, religious groups that are in our facilities, soccer associations, anybody who had booked or planned to rent or deposited funds towards a rental is what I'm talking about.
If during this time we saw soccer teams using our fields, how do we verify that they used the field or did not use the field to get their refund?
Director Lesane, I'd have to get back to you that. I'm not familiar with that level of
Thank you.
I would assume that they may have been informally using it. I'm not aware of formal use, and I can get back to you.
Thank you.
Jeff, thank you so much for putting together this presentation. It's very informative, and I know it's a trying time for so many families who thought the spring was going to look one way and now it kind of looks another. I just have a couple of things because I know that it wasn't parents that canceled these trips. And so just making sure that just to acknowledge that, because I know some of the clauses that you referred to specifically relate to when a parent cancels or a student cancels a trip. And so it's not refundable after X date. And this was more of an act of God, if you will. And so just two things. One, as Sarah and her team are negotiating these refunds, was there force majeure language in these contracts with these vendors that we had gone out to RFP on? And then my second thing is around insurance. And I know we kind of have like a blanket sentence that we tell parents, hey, get travel insurance for these things. But what I find is the parents who most probably need the insurance, who are, you know, suffering right now, not having this cash flow in their pocket, they're probably the ones least able or aware of where to get that insurance. So is there going to be a push now that we've got some lessons learned from what can happen when an act of God happens? It could be an earthquake, a pandemic, or anything, but to just protect our families more so that they don't end up in situations where we have a massive earthquake and all of a sudden we've got $2,000 being held somewhere and not having access to it for a few months.
So there's a number of questions there. I will try to address them individually. I think that we would all agree that we would enjoy making our families whole. There's a lot of thoughtfulness put into putting together the paperwork to have families sign up front, and I can certainly agree that we could have a big blinking beacon about travel insurance when we start to look at $500,000 worth of travel that I just quickly went through. The concept was really about commitment and shared risk. And without question, COVID is an unexpected event. I'm not a legal expert. You mentioned force majeure, and the contracts do reference it to my knowledge. It's from my background or understanding in general, that is a place where both parties no longer need to perform, and then you settle up with wherever you were. We've had all parties continue to perform. We've had them act on our behalf, and I'm thinking in particular with the choir, and we believe that we have attained a greater savings on that trip than had we looked at the concept of force majeure, not to mention legal fees. So yes, force majeure is considered. The second part to this is we have auditors telling us as districts are trying to sort through this throughout the state, and the auditors are saying you need to reference your policies and your signed documents, and we will hold you to that. And at this point in time, we have signed documents from parents fully acknowledging the non-refundable deposit. And at this point in time, it's important our public knows that we don't have the money. It's not that we're not refunding it. It's that the agency, and if you look at the agency who handled it, you would probably concur that they have a lot of time invested and they have some certain operating costs that would come into play with the force majeure. So trying to negotiate that down and move it forward is what we're trying to do. But our question, when we look at it from an audit perspective, is if we're not able to attain it, you have two choices. You can have the ASB vote to basically give $30,000 back to cover those non-refundable deposits, or you look to the general fund. And from the general fund perspective, it's likely to be considered a gift of public funds and an audit risk. And that's what the auditors are alluding to. So it's not that we don't want to, it is probably, if we were to take that step and create a precedent, then I think significantly we would be having to think about the magnitude of these trips and the cost of these trips and our ability to indemnify in every way people who participate. So that may have been a long roundabout a way of wrapping up all three, but we consider it an audit risk, and we believe that we're acting and more aggressively attaining resources back to our families than we would on a legal route.
And thank you for that. And just to be clear, I was not suggesting that our general fund or any other district funds be used to make families whole, just to be super clear about that. I was simply using force majeure as a situation where the thing that's wanting to be attained cannot be attained, right? There's just no way around it. Even if these parents, like, I would love to put my daughter or any of my children on a plane next week to go far out of state after homeschooling for the last 2 months. Let's be super clear, but I can't. And so as a result, you know, what happens when you can't? Not that you won't. And I just want to make that really clear so that we are being empathetic to parents, understanding that we're not saying you did something wrong, you canceled this trip, now you're at the, you know, at the behest of this contract that you should have known better when you signed. And that's sometimes the feeling that might be conveyed when we start saying you signed the documents, you know, good luck with that. So I'm happy that it sounds like we're going to be able to do better for those families than just, like you said, that general non-refundable piece of it, but just being super careful with our language so that we understand that we really have a lot of money that belongs to the parents they'll get back, but also to, lastly, to your other point, that the school district is not holding any of that for administrative costs. Anything that the parents don't receive back is actually going to the vendors that we've contracted to. Is that correct?
I thank you for both the question and the statement to follow, because that is something that I know my colleagues are working on, effectively communicating our desire and our effort and our outcome. So thank you for bringing that out so those who are watching better understand what's going on.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Jeff. So just two questions for you. Would you say that overall, most of the vendors have been engaging in kind of good faith negotiations as far as that's what it sounds like? It sounds like the district staff, in any case, is really aggressively pursuing these things. So have the vendors, by and large, been responsive to that? And then the second question, as far as facility use fees, after you answer this first question, you know, what is that? Does that have any sort of hit to our bottom line, or is it negligible in the grand scheme of things?
Okay, the first question, the vendors, particularly, I'm talking about the travel agencies and most anybody that regularly does business with districts, which is most everybody I've been speaking of, have been very cooperative. They've been working hard. And when you think about these national agencies that have districts from all over the nation, but they recognize their food chain as us. And so they are doing their best to A, stay in business, and B, represent us so that we come back. And that's where the rolling it forward a year is sort of a commitment to them and a commitment to us, you know, provided they're still there, but we don't even want to contemplate that. So yes, I would say the airlines are the most difficult. And if you're ticketed, it becomes very challenging. And so if we can at least get the credits and pay it forward to the younger classmen, that's been our best bet. And each one of them have been difficult, or excuse me, different. So I won't compliment the airlines, but I also will say they're trying to deal with the circumstances in the news every day. Facility use fees, yes, there is a revenue stream. It is one of the revenue streams that covers the cost of us manage it. So without that revenue stream, yeah, there is a financial hit, not the one that we've quantified. We do have some savings because part of what they're paying for is, you know, custodial cleanup, some different costs that occur. But certainly the use fees offset some costs that are in place. But when you look at it as an aggregate, there's other areas of our district where we are having some savings. So again, it'll all wash together, and we're just watching each of these cost centers independently and just trying to manage our costs when we can.
Thank you very much.
I would like to say one comment that just struck me as we're talking about. It seems that in these uncertain times, trip insurance would have perhaps helped cover our families and helped to make them whole after this came up. And, you know, just kind of sitting here reflecting, I remember years ago, trip insurance was at very unusual thing to purchase. And now you can't buy a ticket online without them asking and suggesting and recommending that you get trip insurance. And so I think as we move forward and we look at learnings from this pandemic that has brought to the district, that I think we should potentially look at requiring families to purchase trip insurance when it is a school-sponsored event or a district-sponsored event where they're going to be traveling, and the likelihood of a situation arising, which, you know, just we don't know if this could happen again. But then it also covers for things like illness or a broken leg or things that are out of the control of families. And I just think that it would just be good assurance for us when we're promoting trips that of course students want to go on to do that going forward. So that's my thoughts on this.
And could I just second that, because I think it would be very equitable to do just what Director Mason was saying, because then families can roll that into their fundraising totals. If we as a district put it on that, it's not them going out and purchasing it when they might not be able to afford the trip to begin with.
Correct. I agree.
And so that's phenomenal.
I would also say that that's a good recommendation. I do know our family was planning to make a trip to the East Coast for my son's graduation. And because the governors at 2 states that I went through had said, had a stay at home order in place, that was enough justification for the airlines to refund in total the entire trip. So we may want to allow parents to have that information, and New York happened to be one of them. So the airlines at that time, the airline, I guess, that we were taking, the 2 airlines, they refunded everything back because of the stay at home order in place during the time of our trip. So you may want to use that.
Yeah, I found that the airlines are varied in terms of what they're doing for people to make them whole on trips that were already scheduled. And a lot of them are giving credit, and that's great for a family that's going to be traveling together again soon in the future or within the year, just rebooking. But it's not so great for an individual student who was leaving their family and there's only one ticket and now they're a senior, or there's just a lot of scenarios where the credit isn't as ideal, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to thank the staff for working on it, and you, Jeff Moore, for spearheading that effort, and just keep continuing to do what you're doing and keep us updated.
Thank you.
Do directors have any further comments or questions on this topic? Okay, with that said, we are actually now at a point of a 15-minute break, and I'm going to say it's 10 after. It's really 11 after, but I'm going to say 10 after, and we'll try and resume here at 25 after 6. So grab yourself a drink, a bite to eat, whatever you need. I've never done a break in a Zoom meeting. Can someone provide instruction? Do we want to just mute?
Can we just mute and turn off our cameras? That's what I was going to do.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And then come back.
Yes, mute yourselves. Everybody mute.
Dr. Tolson, I think your computer sounds kind of like a steamboat.
Yes, Jeff, thank you. We're in a public meeting, but yes, because all the Zooms, it's gotten older the past 12 weeks. Thank you.
I didn't know you could actually Zoom a computer out.
Only I can. It's on borrowed time. I'll be on Amazon tonight about 8:30. Yep.
I show that it's 25 after, so, and I see 3 directors, and I see Pam is not yet logged on with video, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. Our next item of business in the agenda is unfinished business, and tonight we don't have any unfinished business, so we'll move forward to new business. And I'm super excited about this next item. 13.01 is approval of student representative to the board. And I believe Robert Polk is going to introduce our new student representative.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Yeah, this is always a great part of our school year. It's my pleasure to introduce to you all the Jackson High School sophomore student, Tara Pilch-Bisson, for your consideration as a student representative to the school board beginning September 2020. Her term will end in June in 2022. Tara has quite a resume. In school, she's involved with the ASB Congress. She's part of the competitive speech and debate program and serves as its vice president. She's also the vice president of the Junior States of America. And next year, she hopes to work with the Link Crew program. Along with that, outside of school, Tara currently serves as the chair of the Everett Youth Advisory Board. She's a member of the Mill Creek Youth Advisory Board, a member of the Snohomish County Young Democrats. And in her spare time, she works as a lifeguard and plays a little recreational lacrosse. So she's very involved in a number of things. In her application and things that she shared with us in her interview process, she's very interested in helping create an environment for better civil discourse. And also she wants to improve the communication between students, families, and the school board to help in decision-making processes. Along with that, she has a passion for environmental protection and to create a more diverse representation in positions of authority. From, again, her resume, her interview, talking to Mr. Peters, the principal of Jackson High School, Tara's going to be a very strong contributor to the board, and she's going to represent the students of Everett Public School extremely well. So I now introduce Tara Pilch-Bisson to say a few words.
Okay, I'm going to keep this pretty short. I don't have much to say. I think it's really important to, no matter what age you are, to feel like you have a voice to make the changes that you want to see in any community that you're in. And I think that there's absolutely no better place to start that than in the school system. And so it's really a priority of mine to make my peers and make other students really feel like the changes that they want to see or the problems that they're having are being heard and are being addressed. And so I'm really honored to have the opportunity to use this position to increase that communication and to just play a role in that, making sure that my fellow students feel like they're being heard, and to make sure that you guys are really getting the full perspective of the students. And so I'm really honored. I've been excited about this position for a few months. Like, my dad forwarded me the email as soon as the application went out, and he was like, "This looks like something you'd want to do." And I was like, "Absolutely." So, so I'm really excited to work with you all, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Tara. So, board members, at this time, I'll ask that you vote to approve Tara Pilch-Bisson as our new student board representative.
Madam President, I so move.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve Tara Pilch-Bisson as our new school board representative. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will move forward with the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. The motion carries, and I would like to be the first to welcome Tara. Welcome to the board.
Yay, Tara. You were
congratulations.
One of the standouts. I mean, you were the standout of that interview process, and it was a pleasure talking with you and meeting with you. And I'm pretty excited for you to be on this board. So welcome, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to work with you and the rest of you as well.
I'm hoping that will be more in person than on Zoom. We look forward to meeting you in person, and sorry it's not happening tonight, but I have a feeling we have many months ahead, and really look forward to. You have a very impressive background and definitely a passion for advocacy, and I can tell you're going to be an excellent fit for this board.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Congratulations.
You. Thank you.
Okay, our next item of business is 13.02 High School Mathematics Instructional Materials Adoption. And this is a first reading, and oops. Dana Riley Black, I believe, is going to kick us off.
Okay, so you can see that and you can hear me? I'm joined this evening with Mike McCarthy, our Director of K-12 Mathematics, as well as Kathy Trosvig, our Secondary Mathematics Facilitator. And I'll do a bit of a frame for this evening's session. You know, it's no secret that our school district has identified mathematics across all grade levels as an area of focus. And as we consider the culture, the climate, the systems and instructions which influence mathematics education, quality instructional materials are a central piece to that puzzle. In our Algebra, Geometry, and Algebra 2 courses, we're currently using materials that were adopted in 2012. We started using in our district in 2013. And since that point in time, there's a fair amount that's taken place. Most notably, in 2014-15 school year, Washington State adopted the Common Core State Standards for Mathematics as our mathematics learning standards for the state. These standards, as you'll note, arrived after the adoption of our current mathematics materials. Our staff have now studied these new standards along with accompanying research, and we've developed standards-aligned resources such as proficiency scales and leveled assessments to support our instruction. Another significant step that we've taken since these materials were published is 2 years ago, we adopted new standards-aligned middle school mathematics materials. And finally, another major step has been our district's move to one-to-one technology environment. Updating core high school mathematics materials are needed to fully support teachers in their instruction and assessment of the standards, to support and engage diverse learners, and to provide multiple modalities for learning, particularly with respect to technology. So with this frame, I'm going to hand it off to Mike McCarthy to share with us the process and then the recommendation for this new adoption.
So good evening, board directors, Dr. Saltzman, and community members. We are really excited about tonight's presentation to share with you the progress related to mathematics achievement, focusing on a resource that will be powerful for students and powerful for teachers. So on behalf of a great team of leaders, community members, and teachers on the 2019-20 high school adoption team, I'm excited to share about our process and recommendation of a new core resource for high school mathematics. Tonight, I'll explain the characteristics of the recommendation of materials for algebra, including intensified algebra, geometry, and advanced algebra. You'll notice on the slide here, we have changed the titles slightly to algebraic concepts, geometry and application, and advanced algebraic concepts, but the core courses are formally known as algebra, geometry, and advanced algebra. I'll also request the adoption of the recommended instructional materials at the conclusion of our presentation. So our key performance outcomes, or KPOs, are listed here. And as Dr. Riley Black shared, the purpose of this adoption was to evaluate the replacement for the Pearson Algebra 1 Geometry and Algebra 2 materials, which have been in use since 2013. Our process led us to recommending a material that's standards aligned and built upon best practices for teaching mathematics. In addition, the adoption committee has created an implementation plan for the chosen curricular material. And our commitment throughout this process has been to keep the interests of all of our students at the center while supporting increased achievement for each student across our system. So guided by a rigorous and comprehensive adoption process, next slide, a committee with multiple stakeholders from our community has been meeting since September of 2019. You see some photos of our work here together. One of the ones that we're most proud of is on the right-hand side. We have members from the Communities of Color Coalition, a special education representative, a teacher, and an administrator, all poring over data to make an informed decision on where we need to go with our curriculum. So this group was comprised of 12 teachers, several from each high school and 2 from our middle schools. We had 4 site-based school administrators, 4 district facilitators or directors in the math, special services, English language learner, and technology departments. We also had 2 current EPS parent representatives and 1 former EPS parent representative also on the adoption committee. And in addition to our school district community involvement, we engaged and appreciated valuable insight and feedback through the process, including 5 community members from the Communities of Color Coalition and the Regional STEM Network. So in partnership with school and community members, the adoption committee completed a needs assessment. We also learned together about the latest research and best practice for mathematics, and we solicited materials for review from publishers all over the country. We then began screening these materials for fit in Everett Public Schools. Next slide. So to ensure the review of the materials aligned to our district mission and vision, we ensured that our committee members were steeped in learning experiences to build and collaborate around an understanding of the 5 areas that you see here. Specifically, an emphasis was placed on ensuring that committee members understood how the standards and courses support equity and access for each and every student, how 21st century skills and learning could be built upon through student-centered and student-empowered aspects of proficient and distinguished marks on our Danielson framework, our instructional model, as well as the integration of technology, as we are a one-to-one district in our high schools, as well as support to deeper learning experiences rather than procedural knowledge in mathematics that we want to continue to move away from. Committee members learned how best practices support sense-making and collaboration, discourse-rich classroom environments, and how career-connected learning can prepare our students for college, career, and life readiness. We'll head on to the next slide. So throughout this process, we held regular meetings with each school's math department. So the committee went out to our schools to expand the understanding and provide voice in the selection process beyond the adoption committee. After narrowing the field of 20 publishers to 11, the committee members used Board Procedure 2311P and their appendices to rate materials against predetermined criterion. Through this application of criterion to the materials, committee members moved 3 resources forward to field testing. This field testing occurred during the months of February and March and allowed committee members to gather student and teacher feedback from authentic experiences in our EPS classrooms. During the field testing, we also hosted 3 open house events at each comprehensive high school during other key events such as the AP Roadshow and the middle school transition nights to ensure maximum community participation. And at these events, over 30 families provided input, while many more poured over curriculum, even with their students. In addition, these open houses, administrators and staff not on the adoption committee reviewed and provided feedback on the curriculum. The final step in the adoption process was to review all the data collected. This data was analyzed and it illuminated results from students, teachers, and community. The input that there was a clear and unanimous referral of the instructional resources identified by course, and I'll talk about those on the next several slides. So I am pleased to share that the High School Mathematics Adoption Committee unanimously and enthusiastically supported and selected the Illustrative Mathematics Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 materials published by Kendall Hunt with a copyright date of 2019 for recommendation. This recommendation was brought to the Instructional Materials Committee on May 6th, and this committee put forth its recommendation to the superintendent and to you, the board of directors. Next slide. Illustrative Mathematics is an open source material that's available at no cost to students, teachers, and families, as well as school systems, and it's constantly being updated through a nonprofit group of math educators and researchers. It was founded in 2011 at the University of Arizona. Illustrative Mathematics is a comprehensive suite of math curriculum designed to encourage engaging math discussions supported by tasks, lesson plans, and professional development. As shared by the publisher, this is a problem-based core curriculum that's rooted in Common Core content and practice standards to foster learning and achievement for all. In this curriculum, students learn by doing mathematics in real-world authentic contexts and by constructing arguments using precise language guided by teachers that are facilitating rich discussions. Though the Open Up resource incurs a cost, the only way it incurs a cost is through the consumable student text resources and with the expert-led professional learning that's required of using the program. To support learning at home, Illustrative Mathematics has resources not only for teachers, but for students and families that are accessible in real time and on multiple platforms. So the overarching reason Illustrative Mathematics was selected for recommendation is that the committee felt that this resource was the most comprehensive in supporting the instructional practices that will increase student achievement for all students in Everett Public Schools. This slide shows the highlights that lead to the increased achievement for all. So for example, it provides tight alignment to the Common Core mathematical standards and to the middle school Open Up materials that was also created and written by Illustrative Mathematics. You'll remember that just 2 years ago, the Middle School Adoption Committee recommended the Open Up Illustrative Mathematics series, and that is currently in use by all of our middle school students. This also means that students matriculating through Everett Public Schools from 6th grade on through Algebra 2 will experience the same problem-rich, discourse-engaged, and quality mathematics materials from 6th grade on to Algebra 2. Kendall Hunt's Illustrative Mathematics has unparalleled instructional supports aligned to the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics Effective Teaching Practices as discussed at the board meeting earlier this year. In addition to these effective practices, students found that materials were engaging, relevant, and rigorous, while our team of special educators and English language learner facilitators noted scaffolded support throughout, including translated vocabulary guides, discussion prompts, and modified assignments to support success. Illustrative Mathematics integrates seamlessly with our learning platform Canvas, providing activities and instructional resources for students that are aligned to our one-to-one environment. Next slide. In addition to being a curriculum that was rated highly in accessibility for all, many tools for differentiated support are also available. Tasks that students engage with are aligned to what research calls low floor and high ceiling, meaning differentiation is embedded for students who need support, as well as for those who need to be challenged. In addition, teachers felt that planning for instruction was heavily scaffolded and supported in ways they have not been supported with in the past. No longer will teachers need to search for rich and engaging tasks, but they are built right into their resource. As mentioned before, Illustrative Mathematics has family resources that are available online and in print, as well as translated into several languages. Key concepts for each unit are shared with families, and example problems to support their learning are provided as well. Finally, Illustrative Mathematics ensures targeted and aligned professional development with certificated Illustrative Mathematics developers to ensure teachers are set up for success throughout the implementation. So again, with each of these factors working together will lead to a much needed increase in student achievement in high school mathematics. So as we know, implementation support will be critical for raising the bar in student achievement. The adoption committee will be working together to we're working to continue creating implementation in 2 phases. There's an initial use phase as well as ongoing professional learning. And during the initial use phase, beginning this summer, all high school math teachers will be trained in implementing the new curriculum and using detailed instructional maps to plan for instruction, assessment, and monitoring of student learning and achievement. Ongoing professional learning for each teacher will be scaffolded by an implementation leader that's in a cadre comprised of teachers at each course at every high school that will learn, collaborate, and lead through the implementation cycle. All teachers will also be connected to a PLC focused on the shifts of instructional strategies, and each teacher will also be able to engage in Illustrative Mathematics certified training throughout the implementation. Next slide. So we believe, again, that Illustrative Mathematics is the best instructional resource that we could provide our teachers, our students, and our staff because of the alignment to state learning standards for mathematics, as well as for our advances in educational research provided throughout the curriculum, the connection to our district one-to-one technology environment, and alignment to middle school math materials. Adopting this curriculum will allow us to increase achievement by providing powerful and ongoing instructional supports for each student through each teacher. We're excited about having this incredible resource, the professional learning connected to this resource, and to collaborate continually with Illustrative Mathematics. So with that, on behalf of an amazing instructional group of leaders that I worked with over the last year, we put forward the recommendation of Illustrative Mathematics for your consideration and approval.
Thank you, Michael, for a great overview and a review of the instructional materials adoption process as well. I think that's always a good reminder, and I am always impressed with the rigor that we vet our instructional materials through before we make a decision. I did have a question regarding, well, I was curious about whether we reach out to other districts that might be using the same materials once we sort of narrow the options down to find out sort of how it's going with them. Because I know I have found over the years that even as rigorous as the process is and the stakeholders that we involve, it sometimes isn't always the exact same as we think it might be. Sometimes it looks slightly different once we get to implementation. Do we do any anecdotal just sort of conversations with other districts to find out how it's going?
Yeah, so as a matter of fact, in this particular adoption, there were 3 resources that moved to the field testing, and we sent teachers to the Tumwater School District to examine one of those resources in action. This particular resource was published just this last year, and there are just 2 districts in the local area that had begun the adoption process. What we do know is illustrative mathematics is the resource that's being used at at the middle school level. And there's great feedback from our district and others about changing teacher practice from an older style of teaching mathematics to powerful and engaging ways for kids through that curriculum.
Great, thank you. Well, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people when I say it's time.
You're right, it is.
Directors, do you have questions for either individuals or comments?
I do actually. So I love that this is open source and that this is, you know, kind of the latest and greatest. And I like that you mentioned that for the family supports that it gets translated into several languages. For our English language learning students, are there supplementals that are you translated? Do they have access to those as well, so that if they are not quite understanding something, they can check it in a native language or something like that?
Yeah, there's growing translations for this resource. This is one of the most highly rated by our facilitators in the English language learning department. They said that this was the most aligned to best practices in developing language acquisition strategies. The most heavily translated form of this right now is Spanish, and there are others that are supported, but not as heavily.
I do have a question for Michael too. You mentioned that this would be a great alignment from our middle school math materials. How many other school districts in our county, at least, or that you know of, also are using these types of materials in the middle school?
I don't know exact numbers. I can get back to you with that information related.
I do like the fact that it is an alignment from our middle schools, because if we're teaching our middle schoolers 21st century skills and learnings, and we're trying to also incorporate digital technology as well as a creative focus on math and problem-based learning, is a good segue into continuing that in the high school. My only question is, it's not that I don't want to be the first in the state to use such, but I know that there are other people that are using it. I'd like to learn from them some of the particular hurdles that they may have endured in adopting this curriculum.
Yes, that's a great point. I appreciate that. Evergreen is one school district in the south part of the state that did use this curriculum this current year. And we'll be in contact with them. In fact, we've had conversations about professional development that's been successful down there that we're planning on implementing up here.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, great job. I'm not going to add to what my fellow directors have said, but I'll tell you one thing, you had me at open source. So I swooned, and it's all been uphill since then. So thanks for a great job.
Great, thank you. It's a great team.
Sorry, trying to stay muted and unmuted, and there's no further questions. I think I would like to at this time entertain a motion to adopt the high school mathematics instructional materials.
I think that's a first reading.
Is this going to it's second reading, or?
Typically, that's how it works.
Okay.
We're scheduled for a second reading on June 9th right now.
Okay. Then we will go ahead and move this to second reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then we will move on to 13.03, policy 3225 School-Based Threat Assessment, proposed new reading.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you. The new policy 3225, School-Based Threat Assessment, is presented this evening to comply with House Bill 1216, which mandates that school districts must establish a school-based threat assessment program by the beginning of the 2020-21 school year. House Bill 1216 sets out the basic threat assessment framework and creates a statewide network through the partnership with OSPI and educational service districts that provides school districts with the training and technical assistance to implement a school-based threat assessment program. House Bill 1216 specifies that school-based threat assessment programs must be consistent with the model policy that was co-developed by WASDA and OSPI. Tonight's new policy is based upon that WASDA model. The proposed new policy 3225, school-based threat assessment, has been reviewed by the Policy Review Council, Legal Counsel, and the Superintendent's Cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Directors, do you have any questions on policy 3225? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move this policy to second reading. That takes us to 13.03 under new business, approval of resolution 1234, continuous learning plan, emergency waiver of school days and instructional hours. Dr. Scott?
I think he's muted. I don't hear him.
Oh, I'm sorry. That happens about 2 or 3 times a day. I apologize as much as we are on. Let me try that again. Thank you, President Mason, for that introduction. And we're pleased tonight to request board consideration for resolution 1234 for the board to review and approve the emergency waiver of school days and instructional hours, affirm that the district has implemented a continuous improvement plan for all of its students, and that continuous learning plan meets 5 requirements set forth in the Washington Administrative Code, or the WAC. The district will receive their full annual allocation of state apportionment if it meets 5 criteria. The district implemented a continuous learning plan, which you have in your attachments this evening. The district, the board adopts the resolution approving the continuous learning plan by May 29th. The district extends the school year by an additional 5 days, but it's not required to extend beyond June 19th. The district school board supports the request for school days and instructional hours emergency waiver, which Dr. Matthews will cover after we cover the continuous learning plan. And that the district submits a waiver application on a form provided by OSPI, which was actually just released last Friday, May 15th. And the application will include a copy of the continuous learning plan approved by the board and the district school year calendar, which you approved on May 5th. So we appreciate your consideration for approval of those things this evening under resolution 1234. Briefly, what's required in the continuous learning plan is 5 things. So the district must offer educational engagement to all groups of enrolled students. Secondly, we must include district school year calendar, which you approved on the 5th, including a weekly schedule of staff and student engagement, which you've seen before, which we call our structures, our elementary school structures, our secondary structures. We also must provide a process for the district to determine learning standards that are most essential. So we have to be judicious with how we prioritize those core or essential learning standards. We must establish a system for collecting student engagement information. And then finally, we must award academic grading. So those 5 criteria have to be in the continuous learning plan. You're familiar with this modified school year calendar, which again, you approved on May 5th. You can see that the last day of school was extended to June 19. And again, this is what I was referring to, elementary structures. You saw this a few times, most recently back in mid-April. This is a teacher's view of the structures that were designed to increase predictability, increase routines, and structured student learning at home to provide a continuity of learning support. So while this is the teacher view here, and you can see the learning zone, I'll cover what review a little bit what's in the learning zone. This would be a family view, again, designed to give a little bit more predictability for the school day, but with sufficient flexibility. Inside and outside the learning zone, so both elementary and secondary structures have what we call learning zones. In secondary, we call them class periods. And what happens inside and outside the learning zone essentially is a range of strategies to engage kids in direct or synchronous instruction, outreach to students, and engaging students in the exchange of work, academic work, differentiated supports for students, and computer adaptive learning such as iReady. In the Friday report for the last few weeks, you've seen a K-12 sampling of different ways teachers are engaging students in content through technology. This is what I was referring to earlier about essential learning standards and making them clear to teachers and students and parents. We call them priority snapshots. And so this suffices that the criterion around identifying learning standards that are the most essential. So this is the work the curriculum department's been working alongside teachers for many weeks. And you can see an example here of an English 3 course that identifies both the priority standards and a high-level calendar. We've got here on slide 8, again, a sample of middle school structures. This is the teacher view. I'm going to go through these next ones fairly quickly because you've seen these before. But again, this suffices the criterion that we have structures set up. This is the family view for middle school. You can see that we call them periods instead of the learning zone, but the same range of strategies apply. This is the high school structure, teacher view. And then this is the family view for high school. Continuing to collect student engagement information. This is incredibly important because in order to better allocate resources and support, particularly for our students with significant obstacles to engagement, we need a way to understand which students are engaged and which students are not. And the advantage of using this procedure that we're doing here through our digital gradebook, so we're leveraging that gradebook, the advantage there is that all stakeholders, so teachers, parents, students, and administrators will be able to view the same data. And we're monitoring student engagement weekly, which is one of the criteria. Schools are using, while the district is centrally gathering student engagement data weekly, schools are digging deeper using similar tracking systems to monitor student engagement in order to deliver tailored interventions to kids. So this could come in the form of home visits, calls, emails, other forms of outreach. Academic grading. So this is the last requirement in the continuous learning plan, and it involves awarding academic grading following OSPI rules. And you see the definitions, the working definitions of student engagement and progress. I won't read those there. Progress in particular defined as students demonstrating meeting or growth towards, again, the reference back to the core essential learning standards. You've seen this grading correspondence for high school credit-bearing courses here. This is a very complex set of guidelines here, but they were sort of framed out by OSPI with some parameters given about 4 weeks ago. So the philosophy first established by OSPI and certainly adopted by Everett Public Schools is do no harm. Every student will get the opportunity to improve their grade with their March 17th status as a baseline. No students will receive a pass or a fail or a no credit grade for any course. Every class taken during the closure period will be given a statewide designator on the high school transcript to denote that the COVID-19 environment was obviously extraordinarily unique. And the assignment of an incomplete would be rare, and it would signify educators trying to re-engage students in creative learning opportunities, or to re-engage them. So some examples might include summer school, courses in the following term or year, independent study, competency-based courses, online courses, etc. Students in non-high school credit-bearing courses will continue to be challenged to demonstrate engagement and progress towards core learning standards. Those are sort of our two pillars: engagement and progress to standards. In K-8 non-credit-bearing courses, we have district guidance that is going to be released later this week. We anticipate that will answer any remaining or unanswered questions around K-8 grading and become more specific about the differences between non-credit-bearing course guidelines and those that are high school credit-bearing courses. The guidelines for K-8, particularly in elementary school, will emphasize feedback. It'll emphasize narratives describing academic strengths and growth opportunities. We know that that's especially important for students and families to receive at this time. So now I'm going to transition to Dr. Catherine Matthews, who's going to review the minimum basic education compliance.
So each year, on or before September 15th, I bring to you the minimum basic ed compliance reports. This is a calculation that's done each year on the instructional minutes that are provided in each of our schools for each of our students. And the requirements, you advance one, Dr. Scott.
Catherine, I'm sorry to interrupt. Your voice is very faint compared to the others. If you could maybe just project a little more.
Yep, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Would you like me to repeat what I just said, or are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay. So the requirements for the minimum basic ed is 180 days of instruction for all students, K-12, and then 1,000 hours for kindergarten students. And for students in grades 1 through 12, you can calculate it in two ways, either 1,000 hours for students in grades 1 through 8 and 1,080 for students in grades 9 through 12, or a combined annual average of 1,027 hours for students in grades 1 through 12. And that's generally what school districts use, is the 1 through 12 weighted average. We certainly use it. And when we calculate that this year, we came to, you want to advance that, Dr. Scott? Our grade 1 through 12 average, go back one slide, thank you, is 1032.6 when we started the year. And that gave us a cushion of 3 late starts for snow. That's typically what we work into our schedule. This is a little bit unusual year for us. You want to move forward one, please? In that we had several events that impacted individual schools. For example, the flooding at Everett High took students out for one day. Because it was one school, it doesn't impact our overall days, but it does impact our overall hours that we lost for those students. In addition, we had 3 snow days, which effectively we made up by adding the 16th, 17th, and 18th of June. So that was even trade. We had 1 late start on the 16th of January, did not impact the days, but did impact the hours. And then we had COVID-related closures at Jackson and Woodside, which didn't impact days, but did impact hours for some of our students. And then finally, as the school buildings were closed, we had a period of time where we provided professional development as we ramped up to the online instruction, and then gave our staff time to sort of organize their own households to be providing schooling for both their own children and for the children of our district. Finally, we have a closure on the 22nd of May, which is related to the staff calendar. And I should point out that minimum basic ed is really a calculation of student instructional time. It's not related to staff instructional time. We move forward. So we recovered quite a bit of time. We canceled our lift days during the closure of buildings. We converted one half day to a full day, and then we recovered several late starts for testing in June that would have impacted the high schools, which make up about a quarter of our full population. So those days recovered quite a lot of time. So in the end, we were able to recover enough time that we will be requesting a waiver for only 6 days of our instruction and only 18 of our hours to bring us to that 1027, which is very much in line and in fact better than most districts, mainly because of the way that we structure our calendar and able to recover that time. And that's what we'll be requesting with your approval.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. So thank you, board. We would like to formally request your consideration for approval of Resolution 1234, Continuous Learning Plan and Emergency Waiver of School Days Instructional Hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the information and overview. Directors, do you have questions?
I do have a question. How are we monitoring the instructions that you outline for each student through the teachers to the principals? What kind of information comes back to give us any kind of analysis as that this was actually met?
Director Lesane, are you talking about the 5 criteria in particular?
Yes.
Well, we're monitoring each of those, particularly the educational engagement piece. So in the actual continuous learning plan, you're going to see that there are sources of evidence or artifacts behind the 2-page plan that substantiates the level of engagement for students, special populations of students. And then the pieces around weekly schedule of staff, the pieces around core learning standards and tracking student engagement, those are all observable, right? And so we've got folks like our regionals, for example, regional superintendents who are engaged on an almost daily basis in virtual walkthroughs. I think some of you actually might have been on some virtual walkthroughs. So we're actually looking at and seeing from a student's point of view what the end user, what their experiences might be, and probing and checking for understanding and sharpening those instructional tools to get a better outcome, which is more student engagement, which is higher quality exchange of work and progress to those priority standards.
So how are we incorporating bringing the principals in on the sites, the individual sites, to ensure that these virtual walkthroughs are taking place? How engaged are the principals on this?
That's also a good question. I wouldn't at all give off the impression that they are left out of this process. They are constantly monitoring. The weekly sampling that you receive in the Friday report is a collating from those principals from some of those virtual walkthroughs and the things that they're observing by joining classrooms, things that teachers send them in synchronous or asynchronous environments. So they are very, very embedded in this work, principals are.
And even with special education students?
Absolutely. So we described a little bit back in April the continuous learning plan elements from a student who receives special services, and that each special educator is outlining on that plan, getting specific about how these materials and resources and instructional strategies would be tailored or modified, accommodated student by student, depending on their unique needs. So yes, they're very much engaged, and engaged in ongoing professional development too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director Berg or Nichols, do you have a question or a comment?
Just good job, and thank you so much.
Yeah, I was going to make the comment that many of the components of the waiver we had in place long before they required the waiver. I just feel like we were really ahead of the curve. And specifically on the academic grading, I think that's going to be a challenge as our juniors and sophomores and all our high school students move forward, because I know that there's going to be I feel like we chose the right path, but there's such inconsistency across our state right now, and that's not a problem for us to solve. But many universities don't even look at transcripts until kids are accepted, and they require that the actual transcript is sent. So that will be interesting as we look toward that, how that where the potential inequities are for when our kids are competing against districts that went to an A incomplete model versus an ABC incomplete model. And then I have a question, sort of a follow-up to Director Lassane's comments. Is the information that's being collected on student engagement, is it something that rolls up into a report, or is it more the principals doing check-ins? Or I guess I'm wondering, you know, if I said what percentage of our students in our district right now are being engaged in some kind of academic or continuous learning, could we answer that?
We could, based on our weekly check-in. So I think there's a couple elements to your question, President Mason, and one is that the weekly check-in on Wednesdays, we can analyze the week before. We can do disaggregated data analysis to really hone in on school, classroom, student. And so for last week, for example, a little over 87% of kids in elementary were engaged last week, and 82% in secondary last week. That number is, the number of disengaged students is a lot smaller when you look at the entirety of the school closures. So the 2 months of school closures, there's fewer kids that have never engaged. And we're going like gangbusters and really intently to analyze the kids that have truly not engaged on any of these weeks. And that number is far, far smaller, but the needs could be that much more intensive, as you can imagine.
Right.
Is it possible that we see some type of this analysis? Can we see those types of reports that you, at least, you know, on the next couple of weeks, just on Wednesday, give us, you know, in the Friday report, the breakdown of engagement by schools even?
We have that data. Oh, sorry, Dr. Saltzman, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the board and to the public, that's why we've been working on this from day one. And we're very proud to be over that threshold of 80%. Always room for improvement, but definitely wanting to be over that threshold. So in the Friday report, we could absolutely give you that. I'll have Catherine and Peter and the regionals provide that.
That would be great. My only last question is, how are teachers continuing to collaborate, especially in an environment where they're all learning so much so quickly in terms of best practices for student engagement and such? Because we don't have lift days anymore. They had that one day up front, but that's really, I think we all know, and it's so fluid, it's changing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are actually built-in times in the, sorry about that. There are built-in times within their workday that are designated were professional development hours, and they're also designated for job-alike collaboration. So there is that sufficient flexibility for them to choose, and it's really inspiring to see the level of engagement on PD, ranging from social emotional learning to getting better at a certain digital platform, or going that second or third layer behind the functionality of those digital platforms. So they're engaging both with themselves and grade level teams. We were on calls today talking with principals and coaches about how they were checking in with the third grade team or the English department. So it's remarkable how folks are still trying to stay connected, even though we're separated, but they're still trying to stay connected and collaborate.
If I could just add to that, Madam Chair, too, is the expectation is for regionals to have leadership meetings with a third grade team, with an AP, with a principal. So you keep that work flowing and you're driving that work with collaboration. So we have set weekly with leadership teams through the regional superintendents.
Great, thank you for the further clarification. I appreciate that. If there's no further questions from directors, I would like to entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1234, Continuous Learning Plan, Emergency Waiver of School Day and Instructional Hours.
I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 1234. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and proceed to the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. The resolution is approved. Thank you. Next, we have 13.05, approval of Resolution 1235, and this is for emergency waiver of high school graduation credits.
Thank you. So while Dr. Woods is pulling this particular presentation up, we would ask that the board consider for its review and approval the emergency waiver of high school graduation credits. And the purpose of this emergency waiver is to, the waiver itself was enabled by the State Board of Education. It's to protect students in the graduating class of 2020 who are on track to graduate from being negatively impacted by the COVID-19 mandated school building closures. So Dr. Kathy Woods is going to explain the components of this resolution at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. Yes, so we're presenting Resolution 1235 for your consideration for adoption. This resolution authorizes the superintendent to implement the emergency waiver of high school graduation credits in response to the COVID-19 school closures. Although it's not required to adopt a board resolution to implement these, waiving core credits is an extraordinary step. And this resolution reinforces your authority to decide whether a student has met graduation requirements. It also includes specific language affirming the good faith effort required for the waiver. And I will talk a little bit later about what is meant in the emergency rules adopted by the State Board of Education, what that good faith effort entails. This is a review of what we went over earlier today, the district graduation requirements for the class of 2020, 22 credits, graduation pathway in math and ELA, and high school and beyond plan. The State Board of Education adopted emergency rules just over a month ago, and the waiver authorizes districts to waive individual student credit requirements. It's not a blanket waiver for the class. It's on an individual basis. Everett Public Schools, our application for this was approved on April 23rd. And we are, as of May 11th, one of 196 districts whose application has been approved. That's out of 295. As you know, WASDA has provided guidance regarding policy changes needed. And in fact, you adopted some of those changes earlier this evening with the revisions of policies 2409 and 2410, and also new policies that you adopted regarding competency-based credit. The waiver expires July 31st, and it provides flexibility of certain credits required for graduation. provided that districts make a good faith effort to address the core course requirements and credit deficiencies, and that students are on track to graduate. And those are very specific definitions that the state board defined when they adopted the rules, and we'll go over those in a couple of minutes. So first, the limit on the number of credits waived is based on what a student was enrolled in or planning to reasonably complete by the end of the 2019-20 school year. The end of the school year by law is defined as August 31st, 2020. So it includes summer school. The waived requirements might include both core credit requirements as well as elective or flexible credit requirement. And that's what's really unusual about this emergency waiver, that it includes those core credits. The waiver does not address potential impacts on students graduating after this year, the 2021 and beyond. This would require additional legislation. It also does not apply to local graduation requirements. Our local graduation requirements, we already have the ability to waive for individual students. And the waiver cannot be used to address missed hours and days for public schools. OSPI developed the rules on that, and you just passed a resolution covering that. It also does not waive other graduation requirements. We talked earlier this evening about the graduation pathway options and the high school and beyond plan requirement. And both of those are still in effect. So if a student has not previously met a pathway requirement in either math or English language arts or both, they may be eligible for the expedited assessment appeal waiver. We anticipate that more students may need to access this expedited appeal process, because if they were unable to meet the pathway requirements due to the cancellation of tests or other issues. As I said though, a great number of our students are meeting them through other things, including like CTE course sequences. The high school and beyond plan requirement also still applies. The waiver also does not apply to students in grades 9, 10, and 11. So good faith effort, we often hear of good faith effort when referring to students, like we want them to make a good faith effort to engage. But that is not what this has to do with. Good faith effort here refers to the district's efforts and actions. So good faith effort means that the schools must engage each student and award credit where possible, rather than waiving credit. In addition to completing the enrolled courses, we provide other opportunities to earn credit, such as competency-based credit, course equivalencies, credit recovery, and other options. We also must use our authority to waive the local credit requirements before moving to the core credit requirements. It's important that we consider equity in implementing the waiver, and that we monitor that as we go and work to mitigate disparate outcomes. And of course, districts must keep accurate records of waived credits for each student. On track to graduate means that the student has completed or is enrolled in courses that would allow them to meet the state graduation requirements by the end of the year. Planned enrollment means credits that the student could have reasonably completed by the end of the school year. And again, that's August 31st. For terms not yet started as of February 29th. These might be in the student's high school and beyond plan, in course registration records, or in a credit attainment or recovery plan that they have developed with staff, like success coordinators and counselors. If a course or credit bearing option has not started by February 29th, Running Start is an example, summer school is an example, terms 7 and 8 at Sequoia High School are examples of terms that had not yet started by February 29th. The planned coursework during those times can count towards their ability to be on track to graduate. And with that, we're formally requesting your consideration and adoption of Resolution 1235.
Thank you very much for the overview. I have a quick question regarding the date. It said that it expires July 31st. Does that capture students that are trying to get credits during summer school?
Yes, we would have to make a decision by July 31st if we believe that student was going to earn that credit in summer school by August 31st, or whether we were going to waive that credit. We just have to make the decision by July 31st.
Can you remind me when summer school ends this year? Or does someone know?
July 30th?
Okay.
So credit recovery ends July 30th. August 6th, our online high school classes finish. Usually our seniors would be involved in the credit recovery at that point. So that is just in time for that deadline, but we would make the decision anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. It seemed like a rather short date in terms of being able to capture the efforts of students. Do directors have questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I would like to call for a motion to approve Resolution 1235, emergency waiver of high school graduation credits.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 1235. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. The resolution 1235 is approved. Thank you. Thank you. And that ends our new business for this afternoon's meeting, which takes us to our upcoming agenda items. Dr. Salzman, please give us an overview.
Yes, good evening. Okay, at the May 26th special meeting, we'll discuss the following: Equity and Access Advisory Council. At the regular meeting on June 9th of 2020, we'll discuss the following: recruitment, retention, and affirmative action. Board annual regular meeting schedule for 2021-22 first reading. High school math instruction material review, the second reading. Policy 3225, school-based threat assessment, new second reading. Board travel, state artist reports, April financial reports, library instruction material surplus, strategic plan, annual operating plan updates, authorization to issue contracts, teacher of the year recognition, and retiring student representative recognition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We move to 15.0, which is executive or closed session, and we do not have an executive or closed session this evening, which takes us to 16.0, adjournment. And I just want to take a minute to thank everyone for sticking with us through a bit of a longer meeting than usual. Certainly this whole coronavirus crisis has created situations, as demonstrated by our agenda tonight, where there's additional work. And I want to thank the folks that are doing that work and making these resolutions happen on behalf of our district. I think you've done an outstanding job. And when I hear about other districts and talking to other folks in other districts, we're doing a very solid job. And I'm just very thankful and appreciative of all of you. So with that, I would like to adjourn and encourage everyone. It's a beautiful evening. Go enjoy the sunshine and time with your family, or a delicious dinner.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Have a great night. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody. I appreciate your work, hard work.
Good night.